Tonight in RCVTV, we're going to be taking a look at the Avocado 24mm by Geek Vape. Alright, so let's do a breakdown of what you get in the box with this guy. So, right at the top, you do have, obviously, your avocado itself, and then you do have a little basic description of it on the little piece of paper there. Now, underneath the paper is where you get all of your goodies, and boy, does this thing come with a lot. So, starting at the top here, you do have a stainless steel drip tip rather than the Delrin drip tip that it comes installed with. It comes with a tri-post screwdriver, Phillips with 2 different Allen key sizes. You get a block, a ceramic block is what they refer to it as. Now this little guy, you already have one installed in here. It's just in case you lose it or maybe break it or something like that. But otherwise, you have a spare one right there. And then you do have a clear glass rather than the frosted glass. And then the last thing you get is a huge goodie bag of parts. So you do have tons of extra O-rings, O-ring colors, lots of little ones for the little pieces inside this guy. You get a 510 drip tip adapter, a heck of a lot of extra grub screws in case you strip them. Wicked that Geek Vape include this. This is really nice to have. Now, for the avocado itself, just get this on a stand so you guys can see it a little bit better. So that's your avocado. It's a really nice, it is obviously 24mm wide. You can see it's a little bit wider than the stand. The reason being that is you have a larger juice capacity. This guy's got up to 5 mils of capacity. That's without wick in it, however. So a lot of people have been saying it's closer to about 4 once you get your wicks inside of it. As well as you have a bigger chamber and a bigger deck to work on. So this allows you to put bigger coils in there, you get a little bit more air in there, and it gives you a lot better flavor than the 22mm avocado. Now, on the top cap here, you can see you have the avocado label, and then you actually have airflow on both sides. Now, this device can be run in single or dual coil mode. The way that is done is by this ceramic block. You can see it's got a small hole into there. That just allows the air on the opposite side to go straight to the back of your coil. So it's always dual airflow, but it's set up for single or dual coil mode. Now, it's fairly easy to adjust your airflow on this cap. You literally just twist it. It has a fairly decent amount of resistance, so it shouldn't just get loose on you from being in your pocket or something like that. But it is easy enough that you're not struggling to adjust it. So you got wide open, and then you can adjust that as much as you need closed, and then it also has the single dot as well. Now on the deck itself, you got that ceramic block that I was talking about. That guy just pulls right off. He's got tiny little O-rings on it that sit down into the actual wick holes. So in case you wanted to run this in single coil mode, you totally can. And in case you wanted to run single coil on the other side, you can flip it around and do it on the other side as well. Now, let's say huge post holes in this guy, which is awesome. So you can put some pretty thick coils in it, and it is a velocity style deck, which makes it very easy to use and very user friendly. Now, this little tab here, you can see this little thing that says Geek Vape across it. That's actually where you fill the tank up. So if you pop this little guy open, there's a nice little plastic sealer, and that's where you fill it up. So you have one hole that you'd be filling through, and then the other hole would be for your air to escape out of while you're filling it up, so you don't get any vapor lock going on inside the tank. Now, the trickiest part about this guy is because you saw in the box that it does come with that replacement glass. The way to clean the tank and replace the glass is kind of annoying and difficult. So I'm just gonna grab a screwdriver really quick, and I will show you guys how to do that. Alright, so I got my flathead screwdriver. So to open this thing up for cleaning or taking glass off, you actually have to take off the 510 pin at the bottom. Now this 510 pin is gold plated, and it comes off in 2 sections. Now the first section is your adjustable pin. So whether you needed it to sit out further or closer in, it's fairly loose once you get it off from the tightest position, but you could still technically use it as a little bit of an adjustable pin. Now you take out that guy first, so that bottom pin, just like that. And then you actually have to stick your flat in there again and take out the long pin, which is actually holding your whole two halves kind of cinched together. So you take out this pin right here, you get it nice and loose, and it just pops right out. Now you can see when you look at this guy is there's a threaded end on this end, and that's where that little thing goes into. If you didn't want to have to take these out in two halves, you could easily cinch these two up together really nice and tight, but then you wouldn't be able to adjust it. Now, what you do is you take your two halves, you take the glass section and you take your deck section, and you actually lefty-loosey this two apart. Now, this pops off from here. You got a nice little O-ring that's in there for an insulator, and then you have your glass section on here. So this is how you would take it apart to clean it. Now, your glass does have those O-rings attached to it, and like I said, this is the frosty glass, and then it also comes with a nice clear glass in the box. Now, the one thing to keep in mind is once you do that, your positive post here actually becomes loose because nothing's actually holding it in place. So if you are going to be cleaning this tank when you have coils in it, or replacing the glass on it when you have coils in it, I would actually recommend taking your coils out just so they don't get messed up or anything like that. So just give me a quick second to throw this back together in fast forward, and then I will continue talking about it. Alright, so what we're going to do is I'm going to throw a pair of the Panic coils in this. These are coils made by one of the RCV employees. This is a Canthal Clapton, fused Claptons. They should pop out at a 0.4 as a single, which is what we're going to throw in there first. I'm going to show you how to set the device up like that for you guys who want to run at a lower wattage, who want a cooler vape. And then I'm going to set it up for dual, and I can show you guys who like to use it at a higher wattage, how to set it up for that as well. Alright, so I got my 521 tab here. For more information on the 521 tab, you're going to want to check the links down in the description below, and you'll find more information about this guy. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of do a fast forward of me throwing a single coil build into this for you guys, and then we'll go on to doing a dual coil setup for it as well. Alright, so I got my build in there for you guys. It's just the Clapton coil that I was showing you earlier. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you guys a trick on how to wick this thing a little bit easier. So I got my Clapton coil in there. I'm actually going to snip off the leads while I'm talking to you here. But basically what I'm going to be doing is showing you how to wick this a little bit easier. Now, what you can do is you use something like the tool itself and just kind of tuck the cotton down into one of those holes on the side there. But what I've been finding is really easy is using these side tweezers, because you just grab it, twist it, and stick it in there, and it works really, really quick and easy. So let me just grab a piece of cotton here. Twist this guy up. Through the coil. Make sure it's nice and fluffy. Alright, now, trick for this, it's kind of hard to see with the frosted glass, but if you look closely when you actually see it in person, there's a little O-ring on the actual little black indent on top of the, or on the center tube going up and down inside the reservoir. That's about the length that I would leave my wick at. You could probably cut it a tiny little bit shorter, but the longer your wick is, the harder and the slower the juice will travel up there. So if you're going to be taking back-to-back hits, you're going to want a little bit of a shorter wick in there. So what I do is I literally just grab the end of the wick, I twist, and I push down as I'm actually pushing it into the little edge there in the hole. And you should be able to just stuff it in there nice and good. Now you don't want it too tight, because what will end up happening is you'll get vapor lock and you won't be able to get juice to your actual coil. So like I said, you just twist, grab, push it down inside, and then you just release, and it actually works pretty well. Now what I would do is I would take this tool or whatever tool you ended up jamming it in there with, and just making sure that there's space around the wick. If your wick is too thick, like I was saying, and not enough air will escape, and you'll get vapor lock, and juice won't actually travel up the wick to your coil. So I'm just making sure that there is a gap in there to some extent. Now you can't really see it. You can see that the cotton itself is kind of sitting just about that O-ring line in there. Now for juicing this guy up today, I'm going to be using Ramped Up from the WhatsApp line, 3 milligram juice. Now because I'm running this in single coil mode, I could easily fill it up through one of those holes on the back side, which is what's for your dual coil setup, but I am just going to open this thing up to use that fill section that I was showing you earlier. So you just stick your bottle or your needle tip or whatever in the one side, and you just fill it up. Now you want to be a little bit slow. You don't want any of this to actually start pouring out. And like I said, if you're going to end up using a syringe, it is closer to 4 mil rather than 5 mil, just because once your wick's in there, it kind of changes things up a little bit. And then you just close that section off. Now, you could wait a while and you could wait for that juice to actually get up to your wicking itself. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to juice it up. Just strip across the top, strips on the sides. Just make sure it's nice and juicy. That way I don't end up getting a dry burn on this. Pop my cap back on. I've got it on wide open on both sides, but I am going to be using the Delrin or ceramic blocks, sorry. So popped it in on the back side here. And I'm just gonna make sure that this pops on over top of it. And let's give this a vape. So I got this on the 5-to-1 tab. We're going to take a vape on it in the single coil setup. So it ohmed out at the 0.36 and it's firing at 3.98 volts, so around 4 volts. So let's give this a quick pull. Now the one thing I do want to keep you guys want to keep in mind is if your coil is mounted on this side and not this side, when you do pick it up to vape on it, you want it tilted to the side that your coil's on. That way your juice flows up your wick to your coil. So I'm just gonna give it a quick pull. Amazing flavor out of this thing. It's actually incredible. I'm a big user of the Theorem RTA, which we have, we'll have a link in the description for that tank as well. And this thing, the flavor on this is excellent. It's definitely comparable to the Theorem. And I'm loving that Delrin drip tip on it. One more pull here. Even at this lower wattage for this thing, it's insane the amount of vapor and flavor production I'm actually getting out of this. All right, so I'm gonna take you back down below. We're gonna install a dual coil on this thing and we'll show you how to wick that setup, and then we'll bring it up top. We'll say our goodbyes. All right, so let's get 2 coils in this bad boy. So I'm gonna pop off my ceramic block. I'm going to loosen off my posts for the new coil. Now, just like a velocity, you do want to stagger your posts. You don't want, if you're going to be doing a dual coil anyways, you don't want your coils in the same post. So you don't want your positive and your negative on one side to both be on the top half, and you don't want it to be on both on the bottom on the other half. Now the reason you want that, and it's pretty simple, it's easier to snip your leads because they won't get in the way of anything. So I got my post loosened off. I'm going to take out this wick just to make things a little bit easier for myself. You do want to make sure your coils are roughly the same distance apart from the post. That'll save you quite a little bit of trouble with that kind of a thing. So I'm just gonna take a look here. It's about the same. And then the nice thing about this screwdriver, it does have the multiple sizes. Now the downside is it's bigger. So I do have to take out my tool, and then I have to make sure I get my coil roughly in the same spot. snip my leads. Like I said, if you don't do this with the staggered coil setup or staggered, it can be quite annoying. And then I'm just going to center this coil so it's roughly in the same position as that other one. Wicked. And I'm just going to heat them up, make sure they're heating up fairly evenly. You can see that one. That one still has juice sitting on it. Perfect, so heating up evenly. I'm just gonna let this cool down and then I'm gonna wick it. All right. Now, for wicking this, it is pretty much the same as the single coil. Now, the one thing you do have to keep in mind when I was talking about that vapor lock, once you have 2 wicks in there, you don't have the other side allowing you to get air down in there when your juice goes up into your coil. So it is much more important when you have a dual coil setup on this to make sure that you have room beside your wicks as they're going down to make sure that you don't get that vapor lock. You'll get a dry hit and you'll be really annoyed with it because it won't go away. It'll just keep happening until that vapor lock situation is sorted out. So pull our wick through, fluff it up a little bit. We'll do the same thing on the other side here. I'm just going to cut these off at about the same length as my old ones, which is just a little bit off the side of the body. Not by much, just a little bit. Now, like I said, you can use that O-ring on that center tube to line it up pretty well. Now, you can always use less, and you can definitely have more, but like I said, you don't want too much because it just won't wick too well for you. Now, like I said, you grab your tips, stuff them down in there. Once you do this a couple times, it actually gets fairly easy. You won't have to struggle with it as much, but the first time it is kind of frustrating trying to get that wick to curve and go down in there. Now, I myself have not tried a vertical build on this, but if any of you have, you can always come into the shop and let us know how it is, because I'm going to be fiddling with this guy for a while, trying to get the best out of it. But there's obviously lots of more people out there that have used it. Definitely a lot more than I have. Now, another thing that works really well for getting this cotton in there and making sure you got a little gap is actually just a spare bit of wire. Spare bit of wire does a really good job of it too. Alright, so I got my wick in there. It's going to slowly work its way in, but like I said, just like last time, I'm going to wick this up, just make sure it gets there a little bit quicker. Alright, now I don't need my ceramic block anymore because I'm going to have airflow on both sides just hitting the coil, which is awesome. So let's take this up top and let's take a vape on it. Alright guys, so we got this sitting on my RX200. It's my personal one. If you guys want to find out more information about the RX200, check the links below. We do have a video on this guy as well. So I've got the Avocado on here at 80 watts. It popped out at a 0.22 for its resistance. Now, the one thing I'm going to mention about using this device in a dual coil setup, when you're vaping on it, usually, like I was saying about the single coil setup, you want to tilt it to the side as you're vaping on it of the side that you have the coil on it so it gets your juice. Now, when you have dual coil and you go to tilt it to one coil and you started using a little bit of that juice, one side might not be getting full amount of juice. So I find it's easier to do it on an angle at the side, so both coils are kind of getting the juice. Now, the downside to the dual coil setup is as your tank starts, or as you use your juice and your tank is getting lower and lower, with a single coil you could tilt it and it would always get that juice basically until it was dry inside the tank. With dual coil, because you have to get both sides, you might have to switch it up a little bit and tilt it to this side then to that side. Otherwise, you're just going to want to keep it more full more often than you would if you were using the single coil setup. So let me just give a quick vape on this thing. Oh my gosh, loving this thing, loving it. I've been using the Theorem RTA since its release basically, and this is the first time I found something that actually might replace it for me. I'm loving the crap out of this Avocado. Now, downsides of it, I haven't really found much other than that annoying thing to when you have to change the glass or clean the tank out. You do have to take the whole thing apart and use as a screwdriver. That can be a little bit annoying, but everything else about this as an RTA, a Jenny style RTA, I'm loving it. So that pretty much covers it for today, guys. And as always,
subscribe to the channel, like the videos,
follow us on Instagram and Twitter.
Like us on Facebook, and until next time,
Make smart choices. Boop.